Make a start. So yeah, hi and welcome everyone to the last 102 session of today. And thanks for joining. So this session is being presented by Niall Ashley at Vitali on an IBM Champions Guide to Advocacy. So Niall recently presented this session at the GS UK Waves event a few weeks back. And I personally felt that it defined a really clear path to becoming an IBM champion. And you may actually surprise yourself with how much you might already be doing already to kind of poise yourself on that journey to becoming a champion in the future. So I felt this session was kind of really well received at that event. So obviously I hope you enjoy it. And yeah, like Niall said, obviously post your questions in the chat and I'll pick them up if Niall doesn't. But yeah, feel free to ask questions as and when throughout. As Niall said, he's happy to take them on whenever. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Niall.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Yeah, so I recently did this session for the Waves Spring event that was at the Barclays office in the United Kingdom. So we had about 100 attendees, and many of them were students, but the vast majority of them were kind of apprentices, trainees, people who, as this is 102 stream, people who are kind of at that point where they're maybe starting to build that confidence in the industry. They're starting to build that prominence, and they want to kind of continue to build that personal brand and make a name for themselves, which is fair enough. It's an admirable goal, and we all kind of have to do that to kind of make the opportunities available for us in the future. So becoming an IBM champion is obviously a kind of a reputable status. Some might even say prestigious. I don't want to kind of oversell it. I'm not an IBM salesperson, but it is a nice thing to put on your your CV and on your LinkedIn. And actually, it's also about the community, and that is something we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today: is community. So I apologise if it seems a little bit sappy, a little bit kind of too wholesome, and maybe that's not your cup of tea, but that is going to be kind of a theme that you'll see throughout. So without further ado, this is the IBM Champions Guide to Advocacy, and that's me. I'm the IBM champion who's presenting this. My name is Niall Ashley. I'm a technical consultant of mainframe security, and I work sort of primarily on rack of administration and assessments, and I work for the company of Vitali Limited in the United Kingdom. So one of the things that we kind of I want to start with is basically this idea here of sort of something that's a very, very well-known place. Now I would usually ask this in such a way that I'd have audience engagement, but it's a little bit difficult through the Zoom chat. But basically, this is the Colosseum or Colosseo, and it's located in Rome, in Italy. And what do people say about Rome, and what do people say about the kind of history of Rome, is that Rome wasn't built in a day. And that's a really kind of important point because at first glance, becoming an IBM champion can seem like, as I say, maybe a convoluted, maybe even an arduous process. It can seem daunting. And this is especially true when we compare ourselves against other people who may have, a vast amount more experience, possibly even more like, followers, for example. But Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour. So you don't have to build everything, you build all that prominence in one go. You'd have to build it all today. You just lay one brick at a time. And that's the reality is, we can compare ourselves to others. We can compare ourselves to some, CEOs and MDs and really, really senior kind of reputable people. But that doesn't mean that we have to be them, by year 3, by year 2, by, some sort of unattainable goal. The reality is that becoming an IBM champion is actually not that difficult, especially if you know what to do and the optimal way to do it. And this presentation explains the kind of acts of advocacy that you can undertake, that you as attendees, you as the audience can undertake in order to kind of work towards a future IBM champion nomination and kind of all the related foibles. So talking about community at the start, I want to touch on these people. I'm at the back with Lucas Yaks. This photo was taken during the GSE UK region event of 2024. Obviously now GS UK as an organisation. Here we've got a number of kind of famous faces. You've got Mark Wilson, you've got Herb Daly, Marcus Savage, Henry Kuiper, Darren Serge, Rebecca Levesque. People who are Ezra Gross, Aileen Wynn, who I believe is actually watching this right now. So you've got really influential people in this industry, and they've done a great job. All of us on there are really proud to be IBM champions, but you have your own journey. And so you don't have to trail in another person's footsteps. You don't have to feel like, how do I become the next Ezra Gross? How do I become the next Angie Stevens? you're you, and that's okay. You know, you don't have to compare yourself to the big dogs. You know, you don't have to compare yourself to these people. We all have our own strengths, we all have our own weaknesses, our own quirks, etc. And the reality is that comparison is the thief of joy, and so no one should feel like they are living in someone else's shadow. So make sure that you pursue this champion, IBM champion kind of title, this status for yourself, and be proud of what you've achieved along the way. Don't compare yourself to others because, yeah, you'll. It's not a nice experience, and as I say, comparison is a thief of joy. So just celebrate your own successes. So one of the things that we kind of need to touch on is this question here. What counts as advocacy? It's a very good question. It's a kind of a question that some people rack their brains about. And advocacy, obviously, you can Google and you can kind of get the word. What does advocacy mean? But what counts as advocacy that will help you attain that kind of status? That's the caveat. You know, how do we attain the IBM champion status? Well, the important thing is basically this: it has to involve IBM technologies. So if it's mainframe aligned, if it's you know you kind of rack FZ secure, if it's you know maybe any number of kind of aligned things, you know it could be storage, it could be DB2, it could be any number of kind of you know JES, SDSF, all these different technologies. But as long as they're mainframe aligned and they are generally IBM technologies or aligned technologies, then they should be viable. So one of the first examples that I want to give here is basically what I'm doing today, presenting. And I do this quite a lot, and I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I do it a lot, and people have me back, so I can't be offensively bad. So, for example, if you can attend a presentation or deliver a presentation, you can deliver that to an audience at a conference, virtually like this one, or in person. That could be at a number of different events: IBM Tech Exchange, Broadcom Mainframe Technical Exchange. You've got IDUG, you've got Share, ReIPL, Open Mainframe Project, you know, Linux Foundation, Mighty Mainframes coming up soon. And you don't have to do it as an individual. You know, you look here, Shari had Ruth Bonser and Azara Stevens on a panel, and it was actually about IBM champions, and that's kind of what inspired me to make this. And that was, as I say, that was only in November, the November just gone. And as I say, you can have this form of advocacy presenting about IBM technologies in different ways. I mean, the picture that I just showed there, I had a session that was on, you know, sort of kind of the kind of neurotypical and neurodivergent workforce of our industry. So maybe that one wouldn't necessarily count. I don't know, because it's more about a general kind of topic. But I did do a topic on data, and I actually touched on the IBM cost of a data breach report, and I touched on IBM technologies that can be used to kind of secure your data. So in that case, that would be viable, right? So that's the conversation that you can have with someone like Sharikara, and you can have these kind of conversations to make sure, you know, does this actually count, or am I just submitting something that's, you know, isn't quite deemed eligible? So let's say we touched on this example here. The joke that I like to say is you could even recreate a meme unintentionally, like Lucas Yax here, where he was doing the presentation for us. You know, so obviously I don't know if actually recreating the meme would count, but yeah, he delivered a presentation, and it just so happened to kind of strike a chord with me. So that was a beautiful moment. Another form of advocacy is kind of organization or volunteering in events. Now, the ones I'm going to touch on here are I was supporting with Elitsa Popova from BMC Software, and Ben Davies there from IBM, and we were supporting Bedford College with their kind of student development day. But you could support a careers fair or kind of the founding of a local kind of new to IBMZ chapter. So, you know, we've got someone there on the screen, Kyle Presley, who's doing a session, and you can actually see he's kind of used ASCII art to represent the mainframe there. And Kyle's, you know, kind of, you know, interested in becoming an IBM champion. And he's already started, and, you know, he's not even left school. Like, he's, you know, kind of an up and coming talent, the way I see it. And that's really great. And he can, you know, speak to Shari and speak to whoever, you know, Namitha, Catherine, Libby, and he can basically submit that. And say, you know, this is something that I've talked about, and I've talked about IBM technologies very specifically, you know, the actual mainframe represented in ASCII art there. And as I say, you could, you know, there's so many people who could actually arguably be eligible. So this was actually a sort of panel that Elitsa was on with 3 other students, one of which was Kyle. And again, that was representing their kind of college, talking about conferences, talking about IBM technologies. So that might count. And that was, as I say, their kind of the college had organized this event, and Kyle had helped organize certain sessions which he was delivering, and he's then volunteered in. I volunteered in, you know, Elitza and Ben had also volunteered in. So that might count. And as I say, it could be a college careers fair rather than a student development day. It could be a local new to Z, new to IBM Z chapter. There's all sorts of different opportunities to kind of organize and volunteer in these things. Another one that we're going to touch on here, which is an extension of that, is myself and Ricky West as kind of members of Waves. We've done a lot to support Wolverhampton's Mainframe Student Society, MASH. And again, we've delivered talks on different topics, and they've basically hosted us, and we've then gone there and presented. So that's something you could do. Maybe look at your nearby universities and ask, do you have a mainframe society? Do you have a British Computer Society, which may be the closest they have? But would they be interested in learning about, databases, kicks, transactions, all sorts of these different topics, RACF, security, etc. The next act of advocacy, I think you can actually get a bonus point for this. So if you I don't know, want to take a screenshot and put this in the actual location that I'm about to name, you'll probably get some kudos in the chat. But there is a Discord server called Systems Enthusiasts. I'm sure most people who watch this either presently or who watch the recording in the future will be aware of SZE. But Systems Enthusiasts host regular Z Rebels technical water cooler kind of webinars. And they cover a variety of different topics that you could support. You could raise a topic you feel passionately about, or you can demonstrate a product, demonstrate a technology. You've got all sorts of different people who get involved. Emma Skirgard, you've got Marcus Davidge. I believe that is Ray Mullins' dog. But yeah, you've got there's talks about Telum chips and AI. They talk about all sorts of different things that relate to the technology, and they advocate for it in that form. As long as it's a genuine contribution and it's not just sort of waffling, sort of chatting kind of incoherently, that could be eligible. And that's also, just for reference, actually, I will go back. That's a great place for community. The Discord server is so friendly, so lovely. I joined quite a while ago, and I was predominantly a lurker. I just sort of sat, kind of read what people posted, and I didn't really say anything. And then I slowly kind of got more and more involved. And now I kind of, maybe chime in on a kind of daily or kind of maybe every other day basis. But I really like all the people involved. It's a great place, and I'd strongly recommend looking to go there. Even if you don't want to become an IBM champion, or even if you maybe don't become one, despite your best efforts, this is a very, very great place to be. The next form I want to touch on is DinoFrame, which is a project that Emma Skirgard's been working on, or has actually created and is live. And there's numerous different tutorials and articles on that website, and you are able to basically contribute. So these tutorials are quite good. There's one there at the bottom right, which I believe is by Kev Milne. And he's talking about, PyFrame. There's also things where people explain how to use Rex. People explain how to use, Palm libs, or I think I've done a kind of tutorial on RACF and Secure. And you can write these tutorials to educate people, and they can be in very different forms. So you could do them in a written form, but you could also do them in a kind of video format in this different medium. So you'd kind of record your footage, edit it, and submit it. But I think it's really important that we have these tutorials because they help people learn, they help people grow. So that's another great place to provide contributions. Now, we wouldn't be living in the year 2025 if we didn't have podcasts. And I'm sure most people in here have either heard of or actively listened to one or two, or God knows how many, depending on how much free time you have, or how long your commute is. But podcasts are quite a big thing now. So what are some of the most notable podcasts? Some of the ones that, would actually kind of maybe be recognized if you talk about the IBM technologies within them, and then you obviously submit this advocacy. So the ones I want to touch on today are Tish Talks Tech, Tech Sharmit with Amit Sharma, the Mainframe Community by Mainframe Society, which I kind of host. I guess I'm plastered all over for better or worse. Terminal Talk with Frank and Jeff. You've got IBM have quite a few. Z Action is one that I'm actually looking into at the moment. There's I'm a Mainframer from Mainframe Open Mainframe Project. You've got DB2 Table Talk, which is from iDoug, and then you've got Z DevOps Talks. So there's actually 8 just there. And as I say, IBM have more. Mainframe Community is one of currently 2. I believe there's going to be 3 from Mainframe Society. I mean, Amit Sharma and Leticia Caro's podcasts, so Tech Sharma and Tish Talks Tech respectively, they're on quite a high number of episodes. They've had really kind of prominent guests. So those are some worth looking at. But again, as long as you talk about these technologies and you can actually advocate for them within that within those podcasts, then that's an opportunity to kind of make that note that down as a form of advocacy. One of the last ones I want to touch on here is mentoring. This is quite an interesting one because mentoring obviously is a two-way street. Now, only the mentor is eligible to kind of claim that advocacy for their kind of on Airtable for their work towards becoming an IBM champion. The mentee can't claim it, but obviously the relationship, the dynamic is mutually beneficial. As a mentor, you are kind of coaching, supporting someone, maybe training them or motivating them, whatever different things you're doing for the individual or the individuals. But as a mentee, you do gain a lot. You are coached and supported. You are motivated, but you are also giving back. And I think that's maybe something that's not stated enough, or it's understated, is that a mentor can still gain a lot from a mentee. They get a new perspective, they get a new way of thinking. They might even have a generational difference or a cultural difference, which helps them see a different side, helps them innovate. So although being a mentor is a form of advocacy, and unfortunately being a mentee doesn't constitute a form of advocacy for becoming an IBM champion, it is nonetheless a really important dynamic to look into and to kind of have. So that's something that, again, I would strongly sort of suggest that people look into. And then there's actually more examples. So this is the diagram that IBM have, and you're kind of working up at the bottom as a contributor up to IBM champion. And as I say, you'd be kind of going through contributor, advocate, influencer, and then ultimately the kind of title, I guess, that people want to attain is IBM champion. And they've got some other examples of recognized forms of advocacy there. So community engagement for the IBM Tech Exchange. You've got user group creation, like we touched on, U to Z, kind of local chapters, content creation, so blogs, podcasts, videos, etc. You've got event hosting or facilitation, product feedback, the contribution of code, so that could be on a GitHub project. Product feedback could also be on the IBM sort of product feedback page. And then you might be involved in actual regular calls. So they have like product feedback where it's not just written, it's actually, they might host calls every now and then where they ask you to test something and provide your feedback, or maybe go through a website and actually provide a form. And then marketing, sales, analysis references, teaching and research, and then being a speaker or presenter about a relevant topic at an event, such as your guide shares or your tech exchange or your mighty mainframe, etc. So those are kind of the very kind of myriad number of different ways to are forms of advocacy that you can use working towards becoming an IBM champion. None of them are any, I think, more or less valuable than others. I don't think there is anything that's weighted. So I believe that you can, I say you can do one, and then you can say, oh, I've done that, and I'm going to do another one. And it's not like that one's worth 2 and another one's worth, 3 points, or one's worth 4 points. I think they're all kind of worth an equal amount. So it's just about doing them and doing them well, rather than sort of doing the ones that are the top scoring and cherry picking what you do. I'm now going to provide my tips if you are looking to become an advocate. The kind of initial response from the audience might be, yes, but Niall, who asked? No one asked. But these are my tips nonetheless. It's my session, and so I shall give them to you, whether you like it or not, I guess. So my first one is just be genuine. Okay, it's really important that you are you. I think we touched on at the start this idea of don't try to be someone else. I really admire Herb Daly, but I can't be Herb. Herb is Herb, and I am Niall, and that's fine. And also, just because maybe there is an overriding or overarching kind of consensus about something, if you genuinely don't believe it, as long as you are constructive and you're not just kind of a heckler, you can say, actually, I don't agree. Emma Skurgard does a lot of work where she talks about declunkification, and that's a really important topic. And it's not necessarily that you need to modernize the mainframe, because the mainframe is very modern. It's incredibly, technologically advanced, but it maybe needs to be slightly less clunky. And I do a lot of work where I talk about, accessibility, and I talk about user interfaces. I talk about kind of the technology we use and how we interface with it, not just from a visual perspective, but auditory and kinesthetic, and etc. And that's because my kind of chosen or my, I guess, natural interests are different from Emma's, and that's fine. So just be genuine to you. People want to hear what you have to think, not what everyone else already thinks. They don't want to hear from the sheep; they want to hear from the shepherd, sort of thing. The next one is find your niche, which really just ties into what I've just said. You can have your niche. You don't have to do the same as everyone else. If everybody did sessions or kind of content about RackF, not that it wouldn't be good to have a lot of content, but it would be kind of oversaturated and you wouldn't have enough content on the other topics. Now, look, I don't know the first thing about DB2, but Marcus Davidge is amazing for that. And if I had any questions about databases, I would talk to him. And in the same vein, if I had a question about kicks, I might ask Lucas Yax or Ezra Gross. And there's loads of people who are worth asking about these things. So find your niche and just be happy with it. You don't have to be a jack of all trades because you risk being a master of none. Make the most of every opportunity. So again, yeah, who asked? The making most of every opportunity is a really important point because ultimately there's a lot of things that may come up, and you sort of think, do I want to do this? Do I not? Maybe you've been invited to a podcast, maybe you're invited to a conference, or you're invited to talk at a conference, or your manager says, we would love to have you represent the company doing a talk about our product, etc. Any number of things. You might be nominated for an award, Tech Channel Rising Star, for example. If you get that, that's amazing. And you shouldn't feel like you have to say no because you're new or you're junior or you're not confident. You should be willing and able to take those opportunities because ultimately you've earned them and people wouldn't trust you with it if they didn't think you were, good enough for it. Having said that, the caveat is do not burn yourself out. I have a lot of opportunities that I'm glad I took and I would have regretted not taking. However, there are times where it's okay to say no, and saying no is the healthiest thing you can do for you. You have to say no because maybe you're going to overwork yourself. You won't have enough breaks. You just stress. I think that's really healthy. Just touching on Aileen from earlier, I submitted a few sessions for the GS UK virtual event this year, and Aileen rejected a couple. And actually, I'm almost glad she did because I've been quite busy this week. I was quite busy last week. And actually, it's probably for the best that I don't have too many sessions to deliver and too much stress, to deal with. So sometimes, you get, sort of like job offers, you can get a rejection and it doesn't actually have to be a negative. Sometimes it actually happens to be for the best. It works out with a silver lining. So yeah, make the most of every opportunity, but do not burn yourself out. Obviously, an important thing is you want to become an IBM champion. That is very cool, very good. But the advocacy that you do, and I'm very particularly talking about the advocacy, is it's important that you do it for others, not for yourself. You're not advocating for yourself. You're not talking about how good you are. You're not saying, let me give myself a pat on the back. I'm great. It's what can we do to help educate people? What can we do to, discuss an important topic? What feedback can I give to better this product? Ultimately, you're doing this for others. You're doing this for the wider community and not for yourself. And that's fine. Don't think of it like, oh yeah, but I want to gain something. Actually, you would gain something because if the entire community benefits, so too do you. If the technology is better, easier to use, if it's better understood, more innovative, that's great for everyone. And that kind of that idea of doing things not for yourself ties into the last point, which is just stay humble. Okay. Ultimately, I teach this to the air cadets who I train on a regular basis. Staying humble is such an important point. You can achieve great things. You can be recognized for a number of untold successes, and you could be given all these awards and all the awards under the sun. But if you start to get arrogant, people are not going to like you. People are not going to want to hear from you. And at that point, your advocacy is all for naught if no one wants to hear from you. Almost if they don't want to hear it because they maybe can't suffer you. So stay humble. Being an IBM champion is great, but it shouldn't come at the expense of your sort of soul, as it were, your humility. So those 2 points that stay humble and be genuine are the kind of two that I want to touch on for a couple more slides here. You do find people who become IBM champions and they take it very, very seriously, and more power to them. But you don't necessarily have to be sort of corporate or super hyper professional. At the end of the day, and this is my experience over the years, is it's important to be true to yourself and not take yourself too seriously. So look, I am an IBM champion and I am a security kind of administrator and I do security assessment and I represent a company which, is already building quite a kind of name for itself. But even outside of that, life is far too short to be kind of self-important and, to not have fun. And that's absolutely true at conferences. So the point I want to touch on is you can have fun. You can get dressed up in your 1960s theme and just have a little, a sort of a fun time with your Sean Rooney's and your Zara Stevens and your Ricky Wests, and looking like a kind of hippie from back in the day. That's okay because you're still a champion. You still do your day job and you do it well, but you're allowed to kind of be yourself and have some fun, and again stay humble. Have some humility. You can do your podcasts, and yet you can still wear a funky t-shirt. You can support Seven Nines, and you can do that, and that's fine. You don't have to, because you're doing this, you have to take yourself so seriously. Like I must be in a suit. I must, cite all my sources, and everything has to be very to the point. No, you're allowed a little bit of fun. Being an IBM champion should not be a negative experience in your life. It should be a positive one. Another point is you can host pub quizzes, and you can drink a J2O, and that's non-alcoholic, just in case anyone thinks I was drinking on the job. You can do that, and you can host pub quizzes, and you can have everyone wearing like floral lays, and you can do that, and that's again true. You can have fun and still be an IBM champion and still be a professional. And there's a few of these, so I apologize, but you can even have the humility to shave your hair off for charity, which I did, and I had all my hair shaved off. I actually did that with the cadets, so they shaved my hair off, and it wasn't a great look, but I did that for charity, and I raised a lot of money, and that's to me is all about the humility, because yes, maybe I didn't look as aesthetic as I did before. Not to say I looked aesthetic at either point, before or after, but I did that because that was an important topic to me. It was about raising money for a really important charity. It was a cancer charity called Macmillan. And again, that was all about humility, because, you might look a little bit silly, a little bit goofy afterwards, but that to me was the right thing to do. And I was proud of what I did. And that actually also gave me the opportunity to have a really, really fun Halloween costume. So I don't know if any of you have ever watched The Addams Family, but Uncle Fester and I are basically twins at this point, identical twins. So the point is, again, with all this advocacy, no matter what it is that you do or where it is that you do it, you can do the advocacy, you can be a professional, you can become, a remarkably well-known person in the industry, you can be a kind of household name, but you can still stay humble, still have a bit of fun, still, stay true to yourself. And that, as I say, is the most important kind of point that I have. Now, you've done all your advocacy, you've stayed humble, you've maybe shaved your hair off for charity, maybe not, who knows? What's after that? What comes after all the advocacy? I think at this point, it's all about, we've sort of done all this advocacy throughout the year. We've had, let's say, 10 months, January to October, and we've done all this advocacy. And then we're at the point, okay, what do we do now to kind of become a champion, to really make sure that we get that champion status? So throughout the year, you would have submitted this content, as I say. You would have submitted that on this Airtable form, which we'll go through, I believe, shortly. But you will also need a nomination in order to kind of, alongside the forms of the aforementioned acts of advocacy, in order to get this status. So if you are a mainframer, you can participate in the IBM Z and Linux One Advocacy Badge Program, as stated here. Or you can be recognized for advocacy as part of the Rising Champions Advocacy Program, which is a year-round opportunity for the other non-Z and Linux One technologies we support. So again, you might support Z and Linux One, or you might support other technologies, maybe IBM I, for example. Now, there are 3 tiers of badges that you'll be eligible for, and you can claim these. These will be basically linked to a Credly account that you will need to have. So the first level, sorry, I've touched on that there. Sorry. So yeah, and they will help with a future nomination to the IBM Champions Program. You will need all 3 to get the IBM Champions Program, IBM Champions status. And these badges are awarded annually, and they are stackable. So the first one is Contributor. An IBM Contributor just involves submitting 2 acts of advocacy you've completed within the last calendar year. And that's according to the recognized program activities, which that's just I guess your small print phrase. You'll see that on all the next slides. So that's 2 acts of advocacy that have been within the last calendar year. The next is Advocate, which is for 5 acts of advocacy or 3 additional acts of advocacy from the contributor level. So a cumulative 5 that you've completed within the last calendar year. And finally, Influencer, which is for 8 cumulative acts of advocacy, or actually, I believe it's 9 if you're doing the Z and Linux One advocate level. So it's slightly higher for the Rising Champions compared to the Rising Champions. As I say, I think it's 8 for Rising Champions, and it's 9 for cumulative 9 for Z Linux 1 kind of aspirants, I guess. So those are your 3 levels. And then again, we go through and you have contributor, advocate, influencer, and then, as I say, your IBM champion status. And that actually, just as a little caveat, that will come with a blazer, assuming you're able to go to a tech exchange event and collect it. So where do you submit your advocacy? So we've done all this advocacy. We know like how it accrues, and we know that we also need a nomination. So you can actually start your IBM champion nomination by first joining the tech exchange community. And then, depending on your interest area, you can join the Z Advocacy Hub. And so you can earn your badges and you can submit them on an Airtable form. And I will actually just put that. In fact, I will put the links in the chat afterwards, or I'll work out a way of like emailing them to anyone who's interested. If they, I don't know, DM me on LinkedIn. I'm just thinking that's probably the easiest way of doing this. But yeah, there'll be an Airtable form. So when do the nominations open? If you do want to be nominated or self-nominate for this status, so they actually begin in the autumn or the fall, if you're if you use that expression, the autumn or fall of 2025, and that will be for every year. So it'll be autumn or fall of every subsequent year. You can actually start earning your advocacy badges today. So we're in April, we're almost in May, and you can already have earned your badges. I've seen quite a few people now who have already earned all 3. They've already gone through all 3 kind of badges that they need, and then they'll just have to do their kind of, I believe, their self. Sorry, I believe my headset just turned off for some reason. That I say, that will help you build a portfolio of advocacy as you work towards your future IBM champion nomination. So we'll come back to this topic, which I think is really important, which is this idea that Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is the journey to become an IBM champion. Okay. However, I touch on Rome because Rome is special to me, and it represents the IBM champion ethos in more ways than one. Okay, and I think it's a really important topic. We talk about community at the start, and I know it's a bit soppy, it's a bit kind of overly wholesome, but to me, that's what the IBM champion kind of community is all about. So I'd say Rome's an interesting one because I went to Rome last year in December. I spent a lot of time sightseeing with friends, and we actually took a class together making traditional mosaics. So these are the ones that my friends made, and don't see mine because it's terrible. I intentionally skipped that one. So yeah, so we made the mosaics, we packed them. You can see some of the other designs around the side, and we did this quite late in the evening. And mine was inspired by the great and noble Auditore de Firenze family. So if anyone's played Assassin's Creed, they'll recognize that. And we made these designs. And while I was in Rome, I actually happened to meet up with someone really who I believe who I think is a lovely person who I care about quite deeply, and that's an esteemed kind of, I guess, not really a colleague but a community colleague, I guess, called Chiara Baldwin, and I think that picture should disappear now. Yeah. So Chiara and I basically we met up. We went to a cafe. We just, it was nice to see her properly. So I actually introduced her to my partner who was on this holiday with me, and we exchanged not just pleasantries, but we actually exchanged gifts. So I'd got her this little Barbie Pandoro, which is almost like I don't want to insult any Italians, but it's kind of like a panettone, but more airy and less like currants or chocolate or anything within it. And I got her one of those because she is the creator of Mainframe Barbie, and she gave me this, which I actually have right here, a 3D printed pink Z16, and she gave me a little keychain that says, "I met Mainframe Barbie in person," which I did. And we just had a really nice time. I had a hot chocolate. She had, I think she had a coffee or something, and we just basically had a nice chat. We went on a walk. We ended up right outside the Colosseum, which is where the photo on the left is taken. And it was a genuinely lovely experience. And the only reason that happened was because I knew I was going to Rome, and I messaged Chiara and I said, "Look, I'm going to be in Rome. I know you're not in Rome, but you're somewhere in that area. Like, would you happen to, have time to meet up?" And so she took I think she took the afternoon off work. She got a train from one of the coasts of Italy and where she lives, and she traveled up to come and see me. And that was such a lovely experience. And I know that I would do the same if she came to the UK. I know I'd do the same if, Sean Rooney came to the UK. I know I'd do the same if any number of people, Devontae Hawkins or whoever, whoever happens to be in the area. We would do that because that's what we care about. We care about the people and the goal and the community. And that to me is what being a champion is all about. It's about this sense of, belonging, this sense of camaraderie, and this sense of kind of friendship. And to me, that's to say that's what the IBM champion is community is all about. And I just think it's really important that I want to sort of touch on that as the ending because even if you know how to become an IBM champion, I just think you should know what you're signing yourself up for. And it is just one of the best communities going. It's such a lovely place, and people are great. And yeah, so thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you've learned something. I hope someone's taken a screenshot of the Discord slide and put that in the actual Discord because Stephen Purver will love that. And yeah, thank you to Shari Kara for everything she does with the IBM Champion program. Thank you for Kiara Bolden for meeting up with me in Rome, and thank you for Chris Knowles and Lucas Yaks for letting me deliver this session for the GS UK events for the 102 stream. And if you'd like to submit any feedback, there's the QR code and there's the kind of page kind of link to do that. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, and this has been my session, A Champion's Guide to Advocacy. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Niall. Give it a minute just to see if anyone's got any questions in the chat. But it looks like you've just had some nice comments about your Uncle Fester.
Yeah, it was. To be honest, the worst part of that look was the fact that I'd actually shaved my eyebrows off as part of the event. I'd done my hair, my eyebrows, and my beard. So I went from. I'd like to think that sometimes in the right light, in the right conditions, I could almost look handsome, and I definitely didn't look that way by the end. But it is what it is. So
And I think
yeah,
one takeaways for me from this session is I think you said now, like it shouldn't be like a tick box exercise, right? You can be doing
100%.
these tasks with the kind of intention of, oh, I just want to get to becoming an IBM champion or become an advocate. You need to kind of organically want to do these things and build your own brand, and that's the important thing is that it's kind of done naturally and organically, and then eventually get there, taking those like you said, those little steps.
Yeah.
But
I think the reality is, Chris, is that it's you don't need to be in the IBM champion community to be in a community, and you don't need to be an IBM champion to be an advocate. It's just sort of like if you're already doing those things, and again, as long as your heart's in the right place, you might as well nominate yourself and submit the advocacy, and aim to be an IBM champion because it's nice to be recognised for what you contribute, and it's nice to become part of a kind of wider community, especially like a multinational kind of intercontinental community.
yeah.
I think the benefits outweigh, to me, there's no cons. It's just pros. There is no negatives to outweigh the kind of positives. But I do think it's maybe not everyone's cup of tea. But yeah, I mean, you just got to have your heart in the right place. You've got to be true to yourself. You've just got to know that when you're doing all of this advocacy, it's not for you. It isn't about you becoming a champion. It's about the community's benefit. And and the fact is, when I met with Cara in Rome, there was no community benefit in that regard. Like it was just me and her having a nice catch up. It was nice for my colleague, my partner to meet a kind of mainframe aligned colleague. And that to me was just what it was all about. It's just a pleasant experience with nice people, and it was just kind of, I don't know, very wholesome. I think that's what being an IBM champion should be. So that's why I wanted to advocate for becoming to you guys to become IBM champions in this way.
Yeah, and I do employ anyone listening in who's interested, in that journey to just see what you might already be doing already. Like I said at the start, like there'll probably be things that you're already contributing to already that has set you on that journey and poised you in a good position to get on that journey to advocacy and becoming an IBM champion. There's plenty of things that you wouldn't be surprised that you're already doing already, and it's worth just checking to see. Like you said, it's about that recognition. You're already doing it, so why not be recognized for that?
Exactly. I mean, I can see there's a lot of students in the chat who I've met personally who support the Mainframe Society in Wolverhampton, and they're kind of watching this session, and it's like, well, a lot of what you'll do with the Mainframe Society is advocacy. Now, maybe you can't get IBM champion this year because you've not done enough, and I know a lot of them are graduating soon, but actually they already do so much that they might be eligible for at least a couple of the badges. They might be eligible for I don't know for contributor and advocate, maybe not influencer, or maybe they could even get that too. But there's no reason they can't submit that and say, actually, I do quite a lot. I've taught people how to do Z Explore. Like they know that because of my efforts, and I'm proud of that, and that's very valid.
Agreed.
But
Cool.
I can't see any questions from the chat. Just like you said, just comments about the the haircut. So I'm more than happy for people to trickle away now if they don't have any further questions, if they don't have any further comments. But yeah, if anyone does want to direct message me, I'm happy to share the links to the Airtable and their kind of nominations form, which I have from last year. So hopefully that will have been refreshed for this year, or maybe not yet because it's not full, but we'll see. And I'm happy to share that or talk to people.
I can imagine you're happy to help people if they
Absolutely, yeah, yeah,
learn more about that journey. But no, thank you so much, and I really appreciate you
my
speaking.
pleasure.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank
And I
you.
think the rest of the conference, we've got plenty more sessions on the 102. So please check the agenda. You know, attend sessions, give your feedback. It's really well received. So, but yeah, thanks all. Appreciate it.
Cheers all.